Welcome back to another episode of Health is Wealth. And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. And as always, I am beyond grateful and thankful to each and every one of you who is tuning in to today's episode and into the podcast, as every week I am sharing a new episode with you, just sharing some thoughts, just things that I am going through and learning on my own journey in life, things that I'm learning for the first time, things that I'm just seeing in a different point of view. And, hopefully it brings some value to you, inspire you, motivate you. And if anything, just get a chance to know who I am and what mission I am on in life. And what I wanted to talk to you about today a bit was the number on the scale. And we have to remember that the number on the scale isn't the goal. If you're starting a weight loss journey, a fitness journey, the ultimate goal should be overall health and wellness, becoming stronger, feeling better, feeling like you've got more energy, being happy, being confident, moving better, a lot of these different things. We can get so imprisoned with this idea that number on the weight scale is the end all and be all of everything in our journey. And I'm here to tell you that is just a crock of baloney. See, the thing you have to understand about that number on the scale is it tells you nothing about any of the progress that you're making on your journey. Right? It doesn't tell you how much fat you're losing or how much muscle you're gaining. It doesn't tell you about how much better you are feeling because now you are starting to exercise every day. And so you have to be very cautious of putting everything in all your effort and energy into basing any progress that you're making or, that you're going to start with solely on that number on the scale. I always have this thing that I like to say that, if your ultimate goal is weight loss, then the fastest way to lose weight in the morning is to cut one of your arms off, the night before. And there you go. You'll lose weight just like that, I promise you. Like I said, there's something about this scale, that this number just seems to be something that's always embedded into us. We equivalate the fact that, if the numbers are going down on the scale, then we assume that it must be, fat loss, right? Now, if the number goes down on the scale, essentially you lose weight. But the problem with this, again, is the number on that weight scale doesn't tell you much of anything but a number. I can go layer myself up in clothing right now, put 10 layers of shirts, 10 layers of, pants on, go weigh myself, and then take all that off, and then I've lost weight. So the point of this is to say that we need to make sure that if you're starting a weight loss journey, you're starting a fitness journey, that we use other factors, right, in measuring our progress. Because when we live and die by the number on the scale, it is an absolute losing battle. The ultimate goal, as I said, isn't necessarily weight loss, the numbers on the scale, but we have to think overall, the number one goal is feeling better, is looking better, is, gaining more confidence. It's overall health. And you're not going to get any of that as an indicator from the number on the scale. It doesn't tell you the full story. But the problem is it plays mind tricks on us, right? And, so often we can just feel like, an emotional roller coaster. If you weigh yourself one day and then maybe you're starting a fitness journey, a weight loss journey, and then you see on the number of the scale that it goes down a bit, and then the next day all of a sudden it shoots up like 5 pounds, right? And then the next day it's the exact same. There's so many things to consider when it comes to weighing yourself on the scale, right? You can't first base it off of day by day. You have to kind of take an average if you were going to weigh yourself every day and get an average over a week to kind of see where you're at. Another thing to this, though, is depending on how much water you have, how much carbs you've got, there's so many different things that could fluctuate on that scale when it comes to numbers. Also, that depends on the time of day that you're weighing yourself. If you're weighing yourself in the morning one day and then the afternoon the next, you're going to see numbers. So the point I'm trying to illustrate here is that the numbers all are over the place, and that's why it's best not to use the number on the scale to be the very primary indicator of the progress that you're going to make and are making on your journey. This is something I've had to overcome in my own journey of my weight loss and fitness journey, right? It's because, again, we're very programmed to equivalent, weight loss and the number on the scale to actually losing fat. And just because you are losing weight, again, doesn't mean that you are losing fat. And, sometimes that can lead to some unhealthy ways of a journey, right? For someone who's starting a weight loss journey, sometimes it could put you in a bad, habit or some unhealthy habits to where you just assume the numbers are going down on the scale, then that means good. And so you start to sometimes maybe do unhealthy things that will do anything to cut that number down on the scale. And I've seen a lot of that. Sometimes people will starve themselves, not feeding their body properly, not eating correctly, not filling themselves up with the right amount of macronutrients like your carbs, your fats, and your proteins, all for the sake of watching that number go down. Because in our head, the number goes down on the scale, that equals fat loss. Because it's weight loss, that means good. And when you start to have that as the pattern, it leads to those kind of behaviors. People will starve themselves through the day, won't drink anything. They'll start to do all sorts of crazy workouts and exercising. And that's bad, because at that point, you're losing muscle now too. And that's not the whole point of any of this when it comes to our journey. Like I said, for me on my own, weight loss journey, my fitness journey, it's something that over time I've allowed myself to become a little bit better with, and just understanding that the scale number is not the most important thing to me. I do have a goal of wanting to get down to 200 pounds, but not for the sake of getting down to that number, just to see, if I could push myself to do it. But I've come to an understanding, with my own progress, that isn't the absolute most important thing to me. It isn't. It would be nice to get leaner. It would be nice to see the number on the scale go down. Over the last couple months, I've been pretty steady about my weight, to be honest. My body fat percentage has been about the same. I know a lot of this is going to come down to my nutrition. I've been trying to play a lot with it, trying to raise my calories, trying to lower them a bit. I think next what I'm going to try to do is maybe cut my carbs down just a little bit. But more so than any of that, what I have seen the most in progress of, which means the most to me, which is the most important to me, is overall feeling my clothes fitting better, right? Being able to go buy a pair of pants and actually be able to go down in size, being able to go buy shirts and going down in size. As of, yesterday, I've noticed my strength going up quite a bit, and those kind of measures are where you should put the most value in when it comes to your journey, because those indicators and markers are the absolute most important. Fuck the number on the scale, and I'm going to tell you as bluntly as I can, fuck that number on the scale. It doesn't mean shit to anything, right? Obviously, it's a way of us measuring some sort of progress. But again, what we have to realize is it doesn't tell you the whole story. So if you just started a journey, or you've been on one and you've been doing what you can, right? You've been trying to start eating better. You've been working out a little bit more than you used to. Or if you didn't at all, now you're starting to work out. You're starting to drink more water, all of these things. It could be a detriment to all of that, because if you just base a number on the scale and you're making these kind of progress, understand it takes time too, right? You're not going to lose 30 pounds in 1 month. It's just not going to happen unless you're doing something very unhealthy and very dangerous, which isn't the ultimate goal of any of this. The goal is to live a lifestyle that is sustainable, that is long lasting, where you don't feel deprived and feel like you had to do some unhealthy ways of achieving a number on the scale. The goal should always be to be healthy and happy and more energy and feel stronger and feel more confident and start to wear clothes that feel a little bit better, and ultimately develop habits that start to transform your identity, start to transform your mindset, and those kind of things apply to other things in your life that ultimately benefit you and better the quality of other things. When we only base our progress on that number of scale, you're gonna make all these gains, and if you go and step on that scale and you're like, gosh, 2 months has gone by, it feels like I've only, according to the scale, lost 2 pounds, or you've been stagnant, you haven't seen any number on the scale change, yet you're completely missing the fact that maybe you weren't working out before, but now you're going 3 to 4, 5 times a week. Maybe you were eating fast food all the time, and maybe now you reserve that just for going out, or once a week, or now because you're cooking more and you're eating a little bit healthier. That's why it's important to remember that the number on the scale doesn't matter as much as you really think it does, and it should not be the goal. The goal should always be a measure of, how am I feeling? Am I moving better? Other better ways to see progress is, taking pictures. And again, for me, these are things that I remind myself on because, it's been a while. I've been up and down with my weight for a while, and over the last so many months, it's been a very slow progress, but I use an in-body scan machine, and it's a way of measuring your body a little bit more than what the number on the scale can do, right? They typically will have them at like a gym or a supplement store. It's a machine you stand on, you hold on two handles, and it gives you a little bit more in-depth readings as to what's going on with your body, not just your weight. It'll give you an idea of your body mass index, your BMI, your body fat percentage, and so it has a little bit more details to help measure some more progress. Again, it's not the end-all be-all, but just a little bit more that the scale will give you. And then tracking a lot of that over the last 6 months, even though I've had some ups and downs, the overall trajectory of my progress is going down, right? And that's another thing that you have to understand too. If you were to start weighing yourself and mark where you're at, as far as your weight, and then watch it over time, you have to understand this is not a linear progress. Sometimes we have this idea in our head that if we start a weight loss fitness journey and we're up here and then our goal is to be down here, let's say the number on the weight on the scale, we think it's just going to be like this. That's not the way that it happens. It doesn't happen to anybody like that. To measure a real journey in a real authentic one, you're going to see this. You're going to start up here, and then you're going to go down a little bit, and then you're going to go up, and then you're going to go down a little bit, and then you're going to plateau for a little while, and then you're going to go back up. And it's just the way it is. So you have to understand it's normal. It's part of the journey, and that's the way it's going to look for everybody. This is not a linear thing. There's going to be ups and downs and plateaus, but you shouldn't let that be the thing that stops you, right? That discourages you, from continuing to go. It's a long process. We're trying to undo, if you're starting a weight loss fitness journey and to get healthier, we're trying to undo years of perhaps bad habits or negligence in some areas in our life. And it's going to take a good amount of time to recorrect that, to identify as a new person, to build up new habits and new routines and a new identity and new mindset and all these different things. Sometimes we have this in our head just because of things that are sold to us on the internet, lose 60 pounds in 2 months before summer, all these different things. And it can make us feel like if it's taken longer than 2 months to lose 50 pounds, we must be doing something wrong. Let me tell you, folks, if you take people who really make the biggest transformation in their lives, some of the biggest ones have taken some time. Not every journey is going to be the same. Don't measure what it's going to take for you, to get to where you want to in your own journey to anybody else's, because it's not for you to compare this to anybody else, because you're not competing with anybody else other than the person you were yesterday, right? And so things to remember is that, yes, it might take a little bit longer than you might expect it to, and you need to expect that. But just remember that this overall goal is to develop a way of living and a lifestyle that's going to carry you through the rest of your life. You don't want it to be quick, and it's not going to happen that quick, right? You're trying to redo and undo, a pattern of behavior and identity, routines, habits, all these different things that took time to build up to get to a point where you're like, you know what? It's probably time for me to get healthy now. You're not just going to erase that in a couple of months. It's not possible. So give yourself more grace and understanding that, this journey is just going to take a little bit longer than you expect. But if it does, it's not about how fast you can get there. It's about how long you can keep it and how long you can keep it off and sustain it. That's the ultimate goal here, right? So again, the point of this video is to remind us that the ultimate goal isn't that number on the scale, but it's the lifestyle we develop. It's the person that we become. It's the habits, the routines, how we transform and grow as a person. And ultimately, too, how that impacts people around you. Because when you're on this journey and you start to work out more and you start letting go of vices and you start to eat better and you feel better and you feel more energetic and you're moving better, now you're feeling good because you're looking good and you got more energy and you're feeling more confident, that exudes. Your aura is just, you're protruding all of this out into the world, and it affects people around you. People will start to notice that glow. People will start to notice you're a little bit more happy. You're a little bit more excited. You got a little bit more energy. You seem a little bit more just thrilled about life in general. And it's because of the endorphins, the dopamine you get from working out. It feels good. You're doing things that are going to benefit you mentally, physically, and all of that. And it starts to impact people around you because they're like, I want some of that, and you won't believe the amount of people you will start to encourage to start seeking out this lifestyle. And it's just very, very contagious in the best ways possible, So that's why it's like, it's important not to base all the progress on a. The goal is always to make sure that, we are feeling better. We are moving better. There are a million more, like, not a million, but, I could probably, we could figure out a million, sure. But there's a lot more valuable indicators and markers of seeing progress in life when it comes to exercising and living a healthy style than just the number on the scale. And that's always going to be the most important thing for me to reiterate to everyone, because again, from someone who's struggled on my own journey for a very long time, and even seeing the numbers, kind of staying stagnant, not really drop much, even in myself, in my journey over the last few months, to see the strides that I've made in physical strength and movement and mobility and mindset and mind frame and lifestyle changes and choices. And, even at that too, seeing the physical definition coming in certain areas, watching my triceps pop more, seeing certain cuts starting to happen in certain areas, becoming more defined. There are so many more things that tell me that the things that I'm doing are actually working than the number on the scale, that those are the most important things for me, when it comes to that, because those are the things that will always matter. The number on the scale absolutely does not matter, because you can be at any weight and you can get two different people, and one can be very shredded and one person can be, not so shredded, right? So it's really not a matter of, what the number on the scale is. remind yourself and tell yourself that the most important goal I'm working for is to be overall healthy and happy. And that will always be the most important goal. And I say all this because I just don't want anybody to stress out on that number, because it's very easy for us to be binded to that number on the scale and then live to die by that thing on that scale. And it's a very emotional roller coaster when you're watching this thing go up and down, and you think you're losing weight, and then you think you're not, but you think you're doing all the right things, and you're not sure why it's taking so long for that number on the scale to move, and it's just a waste of our time. I hope this helped you today, and thank you so much for tuning in to another week's episode of the Health is Wealth podcast. And as always, I will see you on the next one.